Give us your thoughts on all of these various creatures of various distorted form that appear throughout antiquity.
The idea behind it all is to cross the species, which is a direct confrontation against the created boundaries that the God of Genesis said that he created this, everything after its likeness and kind, and said it is good. The idea of trans-species mixing, not only forbidden by God himself, brought about the judgment upon the earth, killing everything and everyone with the exception of people. People don't believe in Noah's flood. But even prior to Noah's flood, the prophet Jeremiah spoke of another flood that predated the creation of mankind on an earth that was in rebellion. Even the myths of Atlantis, by the way, I don't believe they were just not real places. Atlantis was real. Lemuria was real. Mir was real. Shangri-La. All of these different mythical places have a lot of things in common with the face of the human on a sheep. It's at that point that the God, not a demigod, not a demon masquerading who wants to be God, not Lucifer, but they made themselves an image that they could create and they could be on the same level as God, and they made these horrific creatures, whether they were satyrs, whether they were lion men. In the book of Giants, it said that the fallen angels literally commingled, call it DNA, which obviously it was. They absolutely distorted, perverted, manipulated the DNA of the animals. a pre-Adamic civilization of angels and other beings not created in the image of likeness of God were brought forth, and they rebelled. The Golden Age, if you will, Manetto's Table of Kings, I'm going to throw some stuff out there, the Egyptian antiquity records, they go back tens of thousands of years. The map of the Creator, which is 500,000 years old. The Book of Giants, the word book is a little misleading there because it's fragments, but it's all about the fallen angels messing with every form of animal. These things were messing around with the DNA, crossbreeding everything, and that's where the monsters of antiquity come in. That's where all the strange stuff comes in. That's where all the giant centipedes, millipedes, insects, birds, dinosaurs, all this stuff come in. And in my opinion, we're going to be there again. That's why it took superheroes / half men, half God, in some cases of mythology, to conquer these things. And so when I talk about genetic Armageddon, today's technology producing tomorrow's monsters, we ain't seen anything yet. And what the boys in the black lab coats, and when I say black, I want to make this clear, that's the secret laboratories of the world that do such horrific experiments that Mengele would be the patron saint of these guys. In other words, they're that sick. We're about ready to be sacrificed. And when I say sacrificed, I'm talking on the altar of a supernaturally evil plan to destroy mankind in its entirety. This is why all the secret science programs, the vaccinations, the pharmaceuticals, all of the different plans to control and destroy people are on an accelerated basis. The goal is not to help humanity be all we can be, to borrow the Army's term, but rather to place those of us living now with a very different creature, to basically create a race of gods, little g's, which will then toss out the old humans, that's you and I, John, who will no longer be useful to have around except perhaps as amusing slaves. If anything, the old-style human beings will be an irritation or a reminder of what the transhumanists once were. You see, you remember the movie, obviously, The Terminator. Remember how Skynet becomes the controlling overlord and self-replicating machines continue to destroy mankind?
Sure.
It's the same thing. It's kind of like CERN and the Stargates out there, and most people don't understand what the purpose of Stargates are. The reason history repeats itself is because men don't learn from their past mistakes, and they become apathetic and indifferent, and in apathy and indifference, you offer yourself up for slaughter. God had the children of Israel slay every man, woman, and child that when they went into the promised land. That at a certain point, everything was corrupt, meaning everything was corrupt, up until the time of Noah. That means when the Bible, the Old Testament says Noah was perfect in his generation. That doesn't mean he was morally perfect. We all know that wasn't the case.
True.
The point is that he was the only untampered with genetic stock. And so it said that God was so grieved that he had made man that it repented him. So the thing is that God builds an ark for Noah and his family. So when you look at that, like God destroyed all the men, women, and children, or certain Israelites were commanded to do that, it wasn't because God is the ultimate meanie, it's because they were all corrupt. And had he not given that command and order, there'd be no seed of his creation left. Why did Satan have some of his fallen angels intermarry with human women? Why? Why bother? The reason for this can be understood by investigating the greater context of Genesis. In Genesis 3:15, the first messianic prophecy is recorded. The prophecy declared that the Messiah would be the seed of the woman, and this seed would crush the head of Satan. What is happening in Genesis 6:1-4 is a satanic attempt to corrupt the seed of the woman by having some of his angels take on human form. And I might answer the critics too, that was both before the flood and after the flood. By the way, angels always appear as young males when they take on the human form and intermarry with humankind to try and corrupt the seed. Therefore, the events of Genesis 6:1-4 were a satanic attempt to cancel out the prophecy of Genesis 3:15.
The email says he is so right. Ask him about the bloodline of Satan on Earth. The demons are here through the international bankers, the Rothschild, the Rothschild.
The whole bloodline issue it goes right back to Genesis 3:15, because Satan does have a seed, and that seed he's injected himself into the human race, and obviously wants to propagate his offspring from their inculcation as children. They're taught that Lucifer is the light bringer, okay? Matches used to be called Lucifers. The light bringer that is going to bring mankind out of his bondage to the living God, and that they believe that literally they've been given the divine bloodline. They believe that the control of money, Amsel Rothschild made the statement, "Give me control of a nation's money, and I care not who writes its laws." Then you immediately contrast that with Jesus' words, "The love of money is the root of all evil." What are we seeing right now, John, in the control of money? We are seeing the absolute subjugation, destruction, and the end to America's middle class. These people believe that they are the God-like ones, okay? I will be like the Most High God. They are their father, the devil. And they openly worship Lucifer. And here's something that I'm not injecting this. I mean, some of these guys who are fabulous researchers have gone in and can show the bloodlines all the way back. Nowhere in the Holy Bible does it maintain in any way, shape, or form that Jesus had any offspring physically. He did not have sex with Mary Magdalene and produce a race, if you will, of co-Jesuses throughout earth. But unless someone understands the history, they don't understand that to control the money is to control life. And these guys are now choking the very life. These guys, meaning the international bankers, they are throwing the world into a global economic meltdown in order to bring about the New World Order under Lucifer, which George Bush Sr. referred to, 236 times in his last year of office? The international bankers claim to be literally the not only the light bringers, but the controllers of the destiny of mankind. They want the planet rid of 5.5 billion people, and that should make about 5.5 billion people rather upset. The realm of the jinn in Muslim theology and the end times is very present in their beliefs. Like I Dream of Jeannie, you know, Barbara Eden in the bottle. Where did the jinn, where did the promise of something that had been locked up coming forth, or the words abracadabra, the night hag, Lilith the night hag? Isn't it interesting that a night hag who basically lures a man to have sex and then devours him, literally eats him up as in a cannibal fashion, is that legend would be, you know, reappearing in the desert Southwest amongst the Native Americans. Remember when we used to be told about the moon not having any water and Mars not having any life? There is a total blackout to the mainstream of what's really taking place in space, what we really know about the planets. If the former head of Skunk Works, which is a top-secret governmental development initial program that was under Lockheed, basically came up with a statement, Bud Rich at his retirement dinner, if the American people knew what we've done, that we've been beyond the stars, in essence, he said they'd be furious. When people look at the ending of the space shuttles, they think, oh, woe is us. It's a smart move to save money because we're so far beyond all that. We're hearing all the talk about Elenin and Planet X being the 10th planet, Nibiru, Gabriel's Fist. All of this stuff is classified under national security. Listen, the United States is be divided up in 10 regions, okay? And they actually, you can go on and look up 10 FEMA regions. You know, it's a Hegelian dialectic. Hegelian dialectic is simply this. You create the problem, you provide the solution, and by providing the solution, you bring about the desired result. No clearer Hegelian poster child could be defined in the Patriot Act. The global chaos that the Illuminati demands. There is a supernatural evil hierarchy controlling the underlings, which are an earthly hierarchy, who have willingly given their power unto the beast, who have yielded that which God created them with. They have yielded, given their power over to Satan. May I give you what a four-star general said?
Sure,
He said,
absolutely.
Steve, the weapons are thousands of years in advance because all we do is try and control the technology that existed in the past. They have a history in the Mahabharata and a lot of their Vedic texts of wars that are absolutely right out of the future. Zacharias Sitchin wrote a lot about, wars between God and men, but the ancient Vimana, the flying machines, the high-energy weapons, some of their statements, weapons with the power of 10,000 suns. We're talking about ancient technology that is so far advanced, and in a lot of ways it's nothing more than angel technology, because this is what's hard for people to understand. They accept Hollywood's demons as being the brilliance of fallen angels. Fallen angels don't usually possess human beings. A demon is a disembodied spirit. The Book of Giants and the Book of Enoch teach that the demons were the spirits of the giants who were killed. So they have supernatural intelligence, they have supernatural understanding. Believe me, they know history. And John, a good exercise is for people to study the history of science fiction. The intelligence community learned after Roswell that by putting things into science fiction and putting into the genre of science fiction films, they could absolutely control the information of anything that might leak by just passing off, oh, that's just science fiction. Yeah, they just saw that in the movie. It was a brilliant mind control and population control mechanism for the flow of information.
If they hit us with everything that they can hit us with, they'll have their sound guns up, they'll have their heat shields up, they'll have shock troops all over the place. We won't get anywhere near them.
There's no difference in the power structure, the cult power structure behind the Nazis and their attempt at racial purity. Just understand now, in the elite, they want only their bloodline saved and everybody else died. The elite are ready to occupy their shelters because just like the movie 2012, they have a plan to escape what's coming. They're not going to talk to us about Comet Elenin. They're not going to talk to us about Planet X.
As the highest level of beings in the Judeo-Christian tradition. What's going on here? Maya 2012 prophecy centers around the reappearance of their savior figure whose name is Quetzalcoatl, whose name means the feathered serpent or the winged serpent. Mm-hmm. So is this a David Icke-style reptilian being with a crocodile nose that's coming here to eat us? Or are we in fact really talking about the highest order of beings that in the Judeo-Christian angelic tradition? That is Quetzalcoatl also a seraphim? Now, I'm not saying that David Icke is wrong or that R.A. Boulay is wrong. I'm saying that there's a possibility that there is this other group of perhaps crocodile-nosed tall beings. But when we're actually talking about a reptilian race of winged serpents, flying serpents and dragons, in the ancient world, they're talking about the seraphim. They're talking about the highest order of angels. In other instances, they are portrayed as half human and half serpent. A classic example of this is the Sumerian creator god Enki. He's the one who's credited with crafting the human body, of altering it. When you see depictions of him, he's portrayed as a spirit, specifically a water spirit, and he's shown as half human and half serpent. There is something within us that has been programmed to, perhaps coming from the reptilian brain, to fear beings that are half human and half serpent. But in fact, virtually all of the God beings, including Jesus, have been connected with the serpent. Why we fear this is kind of strange to me when you have all of the greatest lawgivers and teachers actually and directly connecting themselves with this being. I think what's ultimately behind this, George, is some kind of we just have to call it a conspiracy. There is a faction that is out there that does not want humankind to transform, that does not want humankind to achieve the next level of our spiritual evolution into light beings. They want to keep us down on the farm, so they freak us out, scaring us with the story of these reptilian beings that if you go anywhere near any of this teaching, you're in some kind of Illuminati plot that is here to kind of eat you for lunch. And that is simply not true.
Well, should we take the chance?
The serpent of Eden. Our friend Mike Heiser, for example, has pointed out that Nakash, the serpent of Eden, is in fact one of these beings, is the bright snake or shining serpent of Eden, is a fiery serpent. That means that the serpent of Eden is not a reptile, is not a reptilian being. The serpent of Eden is a seraphim, one of these highest order of angels. And in fact, in Sitchin's work, he says that the serpent of Eden is in fact Enki, a being who sought to uplift us to the level of the gods and even to help us to exceed the capabilities of the gods and achieve our ultimate transformation into light beings. If we think of our Milky Way galaxy as the throne that is described, as the temple that is described in the ancient texts, then the Holy of Holies, where the throne is located, must be the center of the galaxy. What do you know? Many mystic traditions, shamanic traditions teach that the center of the galaxy is inhabited by millions of transformed humans who are existing in their light form. They teach us that the center of the Milky Way galaxy is the place that our souls came from. So what I propose or hypothesize is, well, what if we play along with this and suggest the throne of God, the throne of Jesus, is in fact the center of the Milky Way galaxy? This is where the seraphim dwell, and this is where the Mayans say one of these seraphim, the winged serpent, the feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl, will be emerging from in 2012. And
they believe in his return, don't they? Right around.
Yes, they do. They believe in his return. He'll be traveling through a serpent robe. So all three of these depictions are in fact describing this cosmic alignment, 2012, and the opening of a portal or a gateway with beings coming and going through that portal or gateway.
Are they coming via a craft?
No.
How are they getting there? They're not.
Nope. Mayan symbolism suggests they're coming through this umbilical cord called a serpent rope that is likely actually a wormhole. And these beings that are coming and going, in this instance, in the Maya 2012 prophecy, is the feathered serpent, Quetzalcoatl. These figures have transformed themselves into the Merkaba, the space-time light vehicle, and they travel the cosmos as light beings. Ezekiel encountered one of these. Elijah ascended into the heavens in a whirlwind, a vortex, that many believe is actually one of these Merkaba vehicles. Jesus appears to have utilized the Merkaba vehicle as well, and certainly the seraphim do too.
In some of the depictions that we see, ancient depictions, there are pictures of craft in the background, William. I mean, you've seen some of these.
Yeah. I am not a proponent of the idea that these vastly advanced beings are traveling, I should say this, that all of them are traveling in hard or technological metallic craft. The ones that I'm interested in are those who are traveling in these light vehicles. These are organic craft. They are light beings. And we're talking about a race of beings who are far more evolved than extraterrestrials who travel in UFOs. The beings that we want to catch up with, the ones that I feel like we really want to be paying attention to, are those who have already achieved the highest level of transformation, this high order of angels that dwell in the center of the galaxy.
William, do you believe the Anunnaki might have been serpents?
No, I don't. I think that when they manifested to the primitive mind, that they might have appeared to be serpentine because, again, they were resplendent, they were shimmering, they were shining, and ultimately the highest level of the ones I focus on, Enki especially, seem to be traveling through these gateways.
Enki, as you have reported, might have been denigrated, demonized. Why?
Well, his sole desire, according to the Sumerian stories, was to uplift humankind, to even allow humankind to exceed the capabilities of the gods.
He was on our side, right?
He was on our side, yeah, exactly. An entirely benevolent being, but it is his half-brother, Enlil, who's more militaristic, as he's presented in the stories, that doesn't want humankind to have these capabilities. One, because we would rival the gods in our capabilities, and two, we probably wouldn't need them anymore. And so those are two justifications for why Enki was denigrated, and I think it leads to this conclusion that certainly this question that some being or group of entities, probably the Anunnaki, switched off or disabled critical spiritual functions of our DNA, neutered us in a sense, so that we wouldn't be able to match the Anunnaki and we would forever be subservient to them. Then they come into our sacred texts, such as the Old Testament, and implant these stories that tell us, oh, beware of the serpent of wisdom. Don't go near this being. Trouble lurks here. And so what happens is you have people that don't have any concept of their true spiritual capability. They think this is all that is, the human body I'm speaking of. Little do they know that part of our earthly quest is to learn the secrets of the human body, of our DNA, of the double helix, which was in fact Enki's hieroglyph, and activate these capabilities to overcome this, if you want to call it, diabolical switch off, turn everything back on, and light ourselves up. That is our goal. And if, to the extent that people buy into this idea that we can't do that, and people tell me all the time, how dare you say that people can become whole, holy, and complete? You sound like you're Satan. You sound that Satan would say that.
They say that to you?
Yes, they do. I get emails to this effect from people saying that that's what Lucifer would have you believe. That's what Satan would have you believe, that you can become whole, holy, and complete. How dare you, you pathetic piece of human garbage, believe that you can transform yourself into a glorious light being. I'm being maybe a little over dramatic here, but that's the sentiment. That's the basic foundation of Christianity, that we all are sinners, that we don't, and we're sinners because we don't match the glory of God. And the glory of God, the word glory means to glow rays, to glow rainbow rays. So if you're a sinner, it just simply means you're not in your rainbow body, and that pretty much encompasses just about everybody. But the way to overcome this is to activate our spiritual capability, to embrace it, not to be in fear of it. When you go into the Chicago Assyrian Dictionary, which is considered the ultimate authority on the Sumerian language, Nibiru is called the Nibiru. And the definition of the Nibiru is it is a star, a gate, and a crossing point. That these beings are light beings who travel the universe through stargates and wormholes. And the Nibiru, I just don't subscribe to the 12 planet scenario any longer.
The bloodlines that David Icke has talked about, where he believes that the reptilians are ruling the planet right now.
These winged serpents that appear all over the place as seraphim, these aren't beings that are trying to somehow control the banking system of Earth. They have a little bit more on their mind than that. They are not interested in earthly control. They are interested in waking humankind up to their true spiritual potential. That's what this big game is all about. So if you're focused on which Rockefeller is doing what to which, pick another Illuminati bloodline, yeah, that could be a good use of your time, but I'm saying let's focus on what they're really trying to get us to, what they're really trying to withhold from us, which is the keys to unlocking our DNA. How do we connect with these higher order of beings? How, in fact, do we become such beings?
Hey, Mary, go ahead.
Mixing humans with animals, and how we have all these underground cities. And I believe that we obtained this very same level of technology years before the Great Flood, and we screwed up the planet, and you know, we blew it. And you know, all the enlightened, after we did that, there was all these enlightened people underground. And I believe that the fallen angels were actually astronauts. They were coming back to our planet, and after years, there was all these people, just that were not from underground, did not have any technology, and they looked upon them as angels and gods. And I read a book called The Search for Angels, and if the first angels were seen coming down from a mountain. They were tall men. They were really, white skinned, and they had long hair, white and long beards. And I believe that they were astronauts, and there were enlightened beings, and there were all these other people that didn't have a clue what was going on. And,
what do you think of that theory, William? Let's get his take.
Well, this goes back to Enoch, who we discussed earlier, who was taken up into heaven as the sole pure example of this pre-flood civilization that she's describing. Enoch was taken because he was a master of this esoteric lore. He was pure-hearted, and as a result of that, he's taken up into heaven and transformed into the archangel Metatron, whom some claim is actually a seraphim.
When we're facing a nuclear escalation that can turn on a dime, when we're facing everything that we're dealing with in the geopolitical and economic arena, the reason this is important is because history is about to repeat itself, but in the words of Jesus, in a different and a more intense manner than has ever been seen in the earth. I want to take everybody to Jeremiah 4:22 through 28, and this will set the stage for what we're going to talk about. God speaking through the prophet Jeremiah, "For my people is foolish. They have not known me. They are sotish children, and they have none understanding. They are wise to do evil, but to do good they have no knowledge." Now listen to this. This switches from Jeremiah seeing the world as God is revealing it to him. Now this is what we're going to talk about. "I beheld the earth, and lo, it was without form and void, and the heavens, and they had no light." Those words, without form and void, only appear in one other place, and that's in the beginning first couple verses of Genesis. So we've got an anomaly here that most people have probably never put together, and we're going to put it together real quick for people. The place was a wilderness, and all the cities thereof were broken down at the presence of the Lord and by his fierce anger. For thus hath the Lord said, "The whole land shall be desolate, yet will I not make a full end. For this shall the earth mourn, and the heavens above be black, because I have spoken it. I have purposed it, and will not repent, neither will I turn back from it." Now, what we're talking about in dealing with the subject matter this morning that Tim and I are going to kind of lay out for the believers and also for interested parties that believe that, the Bible is not relevant. When you have without form and void, those words are tohu and bohu in the Hebrew. And when they're used once in the Jeremiah passage, which obviously is after Noah's flood, and once before the flood, you're dealing with an anomaly there that is easy to explain, but it has fantastic repercussions. When Tim and the film crew went to the Altiplano in Peru and Bolivia, and they saw the architecture of both pre-flood and post-flood, it's really important, Sheila, that people understand that we're dealing with legends, myths, oral traditions, and historical accounts of prior to the flood of Noah of a gigantic world differing from the world after Noah. There were, by the way, giants in the earth both before the flood and after the flood. That's what Genesis 6 states.
This is a history of the Earth. I studied this for quite a while, and I put together all the pieces that I can from the Bible, from the Sumerian tablets, from carvings, from stone, and I have done a lot of research in addition to that in chemistry, which I have proven that there was literally giants in the Earth, exactly what they say. And I have had them DNA tested, parts of them CAT scanned, and multiple DNA tests, many CAT scans, anatomist testimony that it's real, world famous anatomist, and it recreated the chemistry in the lab. So there's no question that what I'm saying is factual. There were giants on the Earth, and I have them here, and they can easily be tested. Now, let's talk about the history then. So I know that the history is not correct that we've been taught, and I don't think anybody really believes it. Now, let's go back to when did things start. And here is the Sumerian Kings list. This is in stone. You know, it's an inscribed tablet that has all of the kings that were in Sumeria. And this goes back 450,000 years. Now, I know you'd laugh, 450,000 years. Well, this was all transcribed, translated from the tablets, and here's where it started. And you have to read the text. There's thousands and thousands and thousands of these tablets, and there are multiple copies of the same tablet in different libraries. So it's not something that's just silly children's tales. Now, it starts off by, after the kingships descended from heaven, the kingship was in Eridu. In Eridu, Alulim became the king. He was the one that came from the burrow. Now, you can laugh all you want, but if you don't examine the history and examine the things the way I have, then it's irrelevant that you laugh. Now, he ruled for 28,800 years. These people are immortal. The next one ruled for 36,000 years. All right, so I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but all of this is all transcribed from the text. These are all tablets, and it tells all about the kings and when they ruled and what they did and all of that business. And Enki tells the story of the tragedies that happened on Earth. And if you don't study, you don't study. So I can't help you if you don't study. Now, I'm going to give you the timeline. You make a decision if you think it's right or not. All right, this guy's going to show you precisely what happened and explain it.
Cataclysmic events that Velikovsky says took place. Here we have the orbit of the Earth, with its moon moving round it. Inside this orbit was the orbit of the planet Mars. Outside this orbit, there is the orbit of the giant planet Jupiter. Note, no planet Venus. Note, Mars is inside the Earth's orbit. Velikovsky believes that about 1500 BC, Jupiter erupted, giving birth to what became the planet Venus. The planet Venus, in this runaway orbit, passed by the Earth, disturbing the moon and the Earth, causing great cataclysms on the Earth. Then, some hundreds of years later, made a close pass by the planet Mars, disturbing Mars in its orbit, and sending Mars out to make another close pass with further cataclysms by the planet Earth. Subsequently, at about 750 BC, Venus settled down in its nice circular orbit round the Sun, and Mars settled down in its present elliptic orbit outside the orbit of the Earth.
All right, now he said Velikovsky believes. Well, Velikovsky literally read the actual text. There was no computers back when this was done. He did his work in the 40s and 50s. And he literally went to all of these places, to museums, to all of these different places where they had these actual documents, papyruses, and he's a I believe he's like a Palestinian Jew or something. He has a lot of, he knew how to read all this stuff. He knew, and he's worked on this. He was a buddy of Einstein's, and they sort of put him down because he was outside what they considered to be their mainstream. And this is just continuing on today to the exact same thing. And they're fighting my mud fossils. I have DNA, CAT scans, all that stuff, and they just won't even allow it because it literally proves that all this stuff is probably quite true. All right, this is going to be totally shocking, but it's factually the only thing I can come with factually because it's chemistry and it's written text. Now, here's a historical timeline, and this is all recorded. This is not something I'm making up. Now, the sources I'm using is Sumerian tablets, the artifacts that exist, texts, and Velikovsky, Emanuel Velikovsky, who was literally destroyed by academia for going out and doing actual research. He went out and researched all these texts. Now, I'm relying on some of his work, but not a whole lot. Now, the Anunnaki was recorded, and you saw the Kings list, 450,000 years ago they came here. And it talks about how they got here and when they landed and how they came out of the water, and it took them 6 days to set up camp, and, you know, and then they rested on the 7th day. Now, I've seen that somewhere else. Now, let's walk all the way down through history till we hit Atlantis. Now, Atlantis collapsed at 11,400 years ago, according to Plato and Solon. And at that point, and in Herodotus' map of 450 BC shows Atlantis exactly where it is, and I have a video on it. It's the Eye of the Sahara. And it collapsed, and that's really just very little dispute about that. And it fits the exact date and time and size and every single detail, and Herodotus puts it there too. So I'm not going to fight with those guys. I think they're right. Now, what happened next? Let's go down way more into history. Venus was literally born 1500 BC, and it says in the Bible that it was the Son of God, that Venus was born. Well, I don't know if it was Venus, but it says the Son of God was born from, look it up, Revelations 12. So Revelations 12, she was standing on the moon, her feet were on the moon, pregnant, about to give birth. She gave birth to a male son in space. And God swooped down and took the child before dragons ate him. That's what it says. And I can tell you, I have evidence to show that that's true. Listen to me, just keep going. Exodus happened exactly at the same time, 1500 BC. Emanuel Velikovsky says that Venus was born, and he has all the documents. It was recorded everywhere on the earth that this happened. Venus was born as a bright star, as a comet, as bright as the sun. And I'll give you all the stuff to look up. Well, you look it up. People should do their own research. Look up Velikovsky. I have all the evidence for this, and I have all the videos on my Mud Fossils channel. But anyway, so Exodus happened, 1500 BC. So now the Israelites literally escaped under these destructive conditions that happened as Venus was born, because it attacked the earth literally. It almost hit the earth. It knocked Mars out. All kinds of things happened. And I will show you literal video to show you what that event was like. Now, what does the Bible say? 1500 BC, the Bible starts. That's the first texts were written, they say, somewhere around 1500 BC. Now we get down to where you get to Genesis 6.4. Giants in the earth. Well, yes, there was giants in the earth, and I have found them, and I have them DNA tested, and that's not even debatable. So, there's giants in the earth. Well, they talk about the giants being the earth being the sons of, being the new giants that were born to the daughters of man and sons of God, and they were the men of renown, the men of old. Well, that's totally misunderstood. The way it should have been worded was, there were giants in the earth in those days, and really, literally, they were the titans. They were the oldest giants that were written of in the ancient antiquities that created the earth, literally. Those were the titans, the giants that were in the earth in those days. They were the men of old, the men of renown. Then after that, when the sons of God went into the daughters of man, that's the way it should have been read. And that's the way, it can only be read that way. How can the new giants be the old men of renown? So let's go, now I'm going to tell you something that's going to blow your mind. All right, here we go. All right, here it is. In the Bible, Adam was born 6,000 years ago. Now, this is a very, very stable timeline. They tell how old the guy was, how old his son was born, how old he was when his son was born, and it goes right down the line. And by the Bible, Adam was born 6,000 years ago. I mean, these are all give or takes. Now, Christian God arrives at 6,000 years ago. In my mind, that's how I see it. Christian God got here 6,000 years ago with Adam and constructed Adam out of the dirt that was in the ground. Now, remember that, out of the dirt that was in the ground. Now, in the Revelations 12, it says God's son was born from Venus's eruption. He was born in space. 3,500 years ago, born in space. And then Jesus claimed it was his body that fell out of the space. And he said, truly, 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 you have to believe me, I am the bread of life. I fell out of space and fed the Jews in the desert. And what fell? Dried milk. And what is dried milk? The only source I can think of for pellets of dried milk is a gelatinous placenta that comes through space and atomizes into raindrops, literally, of dried milk. And the reason it's milk, when a baby is born, the placenta is flooded with lactic products, lactose, really. And it happens immediately at the instant of birth. It's flooded with this literal feeding of the baby. Exactly the same stuff that is the lactose that the baby drinks. So, I don't know if you can come up with some other way that stuff got. And Jesus said it was me, and they went crazy. They said, "How can you say this?" And he said, "I'm telling you, it's true." And anyway, you have to read all these passages yourself. I have them all online. I have all this stuff documented. But that's all I can tell you. This is the history that I see. Now, could be totally wrong. All of those people could be lying. But I added everything up, and this is what I came out with. So, the problem I got is solved by the research that I did. Although you can't take that God created the earth, literally, in the 6 days. Because that would have been the Anunnaki. They said it took them 6 days to set up camp here. The earth was here. They didn't create it. Now, I have found that all of the planets and everything are literally creatures. Not similar to creatures. They're literally creatures. Now, I'm going to show you what Velikovsky came up with, and then you can think it over. And you know that they had talked about the gods, planets, Jupiter, Mars, all of this stuff were literal creatures to them, and they are literally creatures. Okay, don't forget, he made us out of clay. These are kaolin clays. You see the different colors? That's about all the different colors of people. Now, and that is skin. That is literally skin. I'm serious. That is skin. And they use that to make fine china because it's the most fine, powdery skin that you can have. And anyway, I showed you the other stuff about Velikovsky before. But this is literally the clay that made Adam. Now, where did it come from? It came from the earth. What's in the earth? Giants. You follow where I'm going? They said don't mess around with the people that were made out of the earth because they're giants. And, you know, if you mess around with them, who knows what's going to happen? Well, they did. They got giants. And Enoch said they were 2.5 miles tall, 3,000 ells. And that was just 2.5 miles. And there's no question whatsoever. He was right. All right, a lot of this is based on mud fossil research. That's how I got started on it. And I was more or less forced into this because nobody would come on board and even look at any of this stuff. So, you know, as a material chemist person, I went through and I verified the chemistry was true. Then I had a DNA verified, CAT scan, and there's several of these. Every one of the things that you see in front of you there was alive and is a body part of a creature, and fracked up, you know, pieces of them. Now, totally verified. So let's go into the timeline of history. All right, and I'm going to show you that right now. All right, I'm going to be offering courses, well, I'm offering them now, on Mud Fossil Universe. There's no charge or anything, and they're really not courses. They're just videos showing you the reality of the truth of what chemistry shows and what the texts are, and you know, an honest investigation. I'm not going to just read to anybody. I'm going to show the evidence, and you make your own decision. And that's the way I think you should get educated, because if you go to school and learn what they're telling you about theory, you're wasting your time. Absolutely total waste. Geology is not even close to what they're telling you. These are all living creatures that created these rocks and things. The Earth is literally a living creature. Comet 67P is literally a body part floating in space, and meteors that hit the Earth were alive. This is not something that's even contestable. It just has to be looked at, and it's refused. So, and giants were alive, and it's silly to not look at this. So, don't follow academia. They are not helping you. They're hurting you. They're holding you down to the reality of your life. And this is what I'm going to bring you up to. And there's no charge. You go there, you see what you think. But share it with other people, because you're going to be living in a new universe, literally. I've been literally driven from society. I mean, truly. You cannot speak your mind about this and go into a real world and have people accept you. It's going to be a battle. You're going to be fought against, but you're just going to have to point them toward this. And I present evidence with everything. It's not something that that they can even dispute you. What they'll end up saying is, I'm not going to talk to you about this. It's silly. You don't know what you're talking about. They won't confront the evidence. Not one single challenge, not a single challenge from Yale, Harvard, Johns Hopkins, University of Texas, every single one of them. I've presented them face to face with this, hard hitting with this, as hard as I could hit them, and they all walked away saying there's just nothing to it. Even Yale, just recently, has disavowed this, presented with DNA, and I looked at it, there's nothing there. How could he possibly dismiss this evidence as a true researcher and teacher of truth? Very, very difficult for me to understand. So, you make up your own mind. It's up to you. All right? And I hope you do. I hope you pay close attention, because this is reality. But again, you're going to get beaten up. I can tell you that for a fact. I find this is the easiest way to make the point there was giants in the earth in those days. Now, pretty obvious now. And there's a lot of this. This is not just a singularity here. They are all over the place. Let me just show you something else. Now that's Stonehenge, and that is a foot, and there's no question about it. It has all the architecture of a foot, the anatomy. I can tell you that the chemicals are there. I can see the red and the black where the veins and the arteries are. It's a foot. It goes under the ground exactly the same size. The blood supplies are back in here where you expect them. Now, the reason these mud fossils are here is because of the Great Flood. And when did the Great Flood happen? That's the question, and I'm going to explain to you why they preserved in the manner they preserved. When something is in the wet conditions, especially in like an organic soup, literally all the creatures in the earth literally drowned at the same time. You know, some of them escaped. I know that's a fact. Now, they don't rot. They don't rot like they do when they fall on the ground. So, in the course of being literally pickled and preserved in this briny organic soup, they get coated with because there's electric currents. They're called telluric currents, and those are in waters and so forth, and they literally plate the silicon that's on skin. It's 50 times more dense silicon, and that's on your skin, and it gets plated like, and they're called platypolar silicates. They get plated like shingles on a house, and that preserves whatever inside the thing. And then when they drop to the under the mud, they get preserved under the mud. That's what a mud fossil is, and that's why these are here. And when the waters ran off or whatever happened, they were exposed, and that's why they're laying on the surface of the earth. They're not deep inside. And this is not long ago, and it was apparent. It was all written down in history. It was a great flood, and I'll tell you when that happened. All right, so now we got to decide about the flood, and this is creation.com, and I've looked through this, and it's pretty historical. It's telling how old these people were and how many years between each guy and all this stuff. And it gets down to where it says the placing of the catastrophic global flood in the year 2304, and that's BC. And I go along with that. That's about what I came up with. I hear anywhere between 2300 and 2200, 2400, right in that range. Right? So let's go with 2300. So you got 2300 BC, so that's 4,300 years ago. And Noah existed when? All right, so how do we figure this out? Now, Noah was 600 years old when Methuselah died, and which was the same year the flood started. So Noah was 600, and there's 1,100 years gap between Adam and the birth of Noah. So 1,100 plus 600 is 1,700, and 4,300 years ago makes 6,000 years. So that's what the Bible says, 6,000 years. So let's go with that. That's what the Bible's talking about, and that's when God got here and he created Adam and all that business. But the problem I got is what happened in the media. How did the giants get into Earth?
hybrid man that was found in China. This footage is from a province there. What you're looking at is being described all over the web as a Chinese hybrid man. So the story goes that the boy's mother had claimed she was kidnapped by a Yiren, which is a Chinese version of Bigfoot. This creature raped her repeatedly before she was able to escape back to her small village. 9 months later, she gave birth to this strange boy who grew up to be really big. Although he was never able to speak a language, he did gain a mild understanding of what people were saying to him. He lived to be 33 years old, and because he was kept hidden in a small village, not much is known about it. So what is he exactly? One explanation was that he was born with microcephaly, which is a neurodevelopmental disorder which causes abnormal head growth, poor brain function, and a shorter life expectancy. Skeptics who believe this explanation go on to say that the mother was so ashamed of having a retarded baby, she made up the entire story about being raped by a Bigfoot creature. The problem with this explanation, however, is it doesn't explain the sheer size of this hybrid-looking man, as previous cases of microcephaly have never been very tall. In addition, he displays a lot of ape-like characteristics, such as the size and shape of his ape-like jaw, his extremely long gangly arms, and a lack of a human neck.
Septimius Severus ruled, black people began to rule the Roman Empire. That's why from 193 AD is the time period. Then, 1453, the fall of Constantinople by the Ottoman Turks. That's when the Europeans began to, that's when the Europeans began to come back in power, the Caucasians, because what? They dwelt in an area called the Caucasus Mountains. So remember this, Rome, 193 AD, they come back in power in 1453. So the project is iconoclasm. That means breaker of images. So we're gonna read through these books.
You have 10 minutes.
Okay. We're gonna go to the book called the Icon, page 126. I had to write this down. It's a lot of pages, a lot of pages. And real quick, we're gonna relate this back to the Bible. So page 126, right here. I'm gonna show the pictures and I'm gonna pass it down. So everybody pass it around, all right? Right here, you're gonna see dark images of Jesus Christ and his mother. The images of the prophets and the apostles, they were always painted dark-skinned people. It was the time of 1453 when they started to paint over them as Caucasian people. But they were always painted as dark people. And that's what I'm gonna show you in all these books. So a lot of these images were produced before the Renaissance. Now we're gonna go to page 155. Page 155, I'm gonna show you. 155. Now, I want you to look at this, and we're gonna start from right here. Notice right here, you're gonna pass it around. Notice right here, you're gonna see a dark image. You're gonna see a dark image right here. You're gonna see he was painted dark, but notice around him, they painted him what? A lighter image. You see it? Yeah. It's dark right there, and around him, you're gonna see a light. So pass it around the class so you can see it. Now, the next book, since we got short time, the next book is gonna be Art Treasures of Russia. This book right here, you're going to see more images of the prophets, and all of them being painted as dark-skinned men. Because a lot of times in class, in history, we always learn, when we see people like Septimius Severus, Charlemagne, the Anglo-Saxons, we always see them as these were great famous Caucasian men, when these were really black men that ruled. Rome, the Byzantine Empire, was ruled by black men. So now, go to page 37. Page 37. And on this one, same history note. Right here, you see the front. You see the Archangel Michael in the middle. Jesus Christ, right next to him is Gabriel. What color are they painted? They painted very dark. But in many books after 1453, they're painted white. Why? You had famous iconoclasts, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael, Donatello, 3 Ninja Turtles. They were hired to paint over these images. When I went to Rome and the Vatican and I saw the Sixtine Chapel, he was hired to paint biblical characters, Caucasian men. Why? So that when a lot of people begin to read the history of the Israelites and Jews, they would think that they were Caucasians. That's why. That's history. Now, go to page 78. Page 78. Page 78. So pass it around. Oh, right there. This here is a scene from the Bible called the Transfiguration. And when you see the prophets, you're going to see them as men of color. Notice here his garment is white, but the skin complexion on the prophets, they're all dark-skinned men. Because when you read the scriptures, you always read about the prophets. They always describe themselves as dark-skinned men. And our forefathers, black men, they painted them as that image of being men of color. But what happened? Remember this. 1453, the Renaissance. So now, we're going to go to Spain, a history and art. We're going to go to page 60. We're going to go to page 60. I want you guys to look at this. Now, these women are what color? White. What color are their fingertips? Black. What happened? They got their fingertips dipped in chocolate? No, they weren't dipped in chocolate. They were hired to paint over the images. Why their fingertips black, but their skin is white? Because they had iconoclasts. 1453. Paint over these images. When I went to the Louvre in Paris, a lot of the biblical images throughout the museum, white. Then there was a back room. And when I went inside that room, I seen a lot of dark-skinned images. I seen icons. And I was like, Dad, they got all these images in the back room, But in the open area, when you're walking through, you see all these images, Caucasian men, famous Caucasian men, you would think. But in the back room, smaller area, you see images that, what I'm showing you, dark images, all right? So, wait, where's the book, The Icon? Right when you finish, pass it back up. There's something I want to read. I'm not going to be able to go through every page. Now, I'm going to show you Queen Elizabeth.
5 minutes.
No problem. Queen Elizabeth, I'm going to show you something. Page 77. I'm going to show you right here. Right here is Henry VIII. Right there. Okay, good. Thank you. Go to the page where it says the icons of Constantinople. Right here is King Henry VIII. King Henry VIII, if you type it on Wikipedia, you're going to see a Caucasian man. That's what you're going to see, Caucasian man. This is Henry VIII. He's a black man. Famous king, black man. But you see them as Caucasian man. Guess who this is in the middle? Queen Elizabeth I. She's a black woman. This is Queen Elizabeth I. What happened? 1453. Whitewashed all images. That's what happened. They whitewashed history. So pass that around. Pass that around. So now we're gonna read. No, it's right here in the beginning. I'm sorry. Right here in the beginning. Almost finished. Almost finished. Read this part where it says, "It may seem daring." Right here. Wait, no. Start from iconoclasm.
It says iconoclasm.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Venetian looting in 1204.
Right.
And the sack by the Turks in 1453.
Remember I said the Ottoman Turks sacked the Byzantine Empire, 1453. That's what
are the main reasons why only very few icons have survived in Constantinople.
Right.
It may seem daring, therefore, to write an entire chapter on the icons of the capital.
Right.
Yet the situation is not quite so hopeless.
The situation of a lot of these icons with dark-skinned people, it's not so hopeless. Why? Because there are still some images that survive. That's why I'm able to show you these dark-skinned images. They didn't whitewash every painting because it was too many. Read on.
It says, icons existed not only as panel paintings,
right,
but also as frescoes and wall mosaics,
right,
some of which have emerged from layers of whitewash.
They've emerged from what?
Of whitewash?
Layers of whitewash. That's why when I showed you that Christian woman, she had her image around there. She was all painted white, but her fingertips were black. Why? Because a lot of times they didn't finish whitewashing these images. Now that's all I wanted. Real quick, almost finished, bro. Almost finished. Almost finished. This is page 116. Guess who this is? Spartacus. Spartacus. This is found in Tel Aviv, 1954. He's a black man. But why do we always see him as Caucasian men? Whitewashing. That's why. This is Spartacus. You can pass the book. You can pass the book. And one more. Two more points. Go to page 77. This is the Oxford, oldest English university. The Oxford Illustrated History of Medieval Europe. We're going to go to page 77, and we're going to look on the wall. We're almost done, page 77. Hold on. I think it's page 77. Oh, 177, I'm sorry. 177. Right here. I want you guys to look at this. This is Hosea, Daniel, King David, and Daniel, Hosea, Jonah, King David. What color are they painted? Brown. Black, right. Brown men. Guess when this was before 1453. This is the remarkable windows at Augsburg Cathedral. So you guys can pass that around. Here you go. Now we're going to read one scripture to show why it happened in history. Okay, thank you. First Maccabees. In the Holy Bible, you have a book called the Apocrypha. The Apocrypha was taken out of the Holy Bible in the 1700s by the Protestant Church. The Apocrypha, you can get a King James Version Bible, 1611. You'll see the Apocrypha in it. This Bible has the Apocrypha in it. It cost me a great deal of money, but it has it. It's still in it. So read First Maccabees chapter 1. First Maccabees 1:1. We're going to read about Alexander the Great, and we're going to read about what the Greeks did when they took the records of the Bible.
First Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 1. And it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Kittim, and smitten Darius, king of the Persians.
Remember, Alexander's forefather was Philip of Macedon. Now jump to verse 9 about what happened. When you're going to see what happened when the Greeks.
And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves, so that they sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth.
What did the Bible say?
And evils were multiplied in the earth.
Because what the Greeks were doing, it was all against the Holy Scriptures. So go to 1 Maccabees 3:48. We're going to show you what the Greeks did. The Greeks took the records of the Israelites, and then there's something they did. Okay,
First Maccabees 3:48.
Listen to what the Greeks did. Because iconoclasm, breaking images, that's nothing new. The Greeks took the records of the Israelites and they painted over them as white men. You're going to see it right here.
And laid open the book of the law.
The book of the law is the Holy Bible.
Wherein the heathen.
The heathen is talking about the Greeks because this is when Alexander, this is the time of Antiochus. But it's from chapter 1, it's talking about Alexander the Great. Chapter 3, it goes in the time of Antiochus. He came out of the line of Seleucus, one of Alexander the Great's 4 generals. Come on.
Wherein the heathen had sought to paint the likeness of their images.
That's what they did. They took the records of the Israelites and what they do?
Paint the likeness of their images.
Here it is in this called Our Living Bible. Israelite priests painted black men. These are Jews, black men. But what did the Greeks do? They painted over it. So I'm sorry, that was it. That was it. If you guys have any questions, please ask them now. All right? Any questions? Any questions? Any questions? Yes.
Was this only in America that they really did this?
No. They did this throughout all of Europe. They did this
No, but I mean, like.
That question's irrelevant. This didn't happen. He's not talking about America.
When I say only in America, I mean like. Are there more pictures that are shown throughout the world that do have darker skin?
Well, that's what he's talking about.
Right. That's exactly what I was showing. Because like this book, Art Treasures of Russia. In this book, Art Treasures of Russia, you see dark skin images all over throughout Russia. Because when you look up the history of the slave trade, they took a lot of slaves from Russia. Why was slaves in Russia? Because black people ruled Russia at one point in time. The reason why.
Would they have pictures of?
Yeah, a lot of these areas they're there. Because the reason why they called it the Dark Ages was because dark people ruled. So they called it the Dark Ages. That's why. But when they came back in power, 1453, they overthrew everything. Any other questions?
Oh, yeah. Henry VIII and Elizabeth I. Are you talking about England?
Exactly. Any other questions? No other questions? I know y'all got questions. What's your question?
You're basically saying all the rulers, and according with everyone, all the prophets, Jesus, were all black.
All dark skin.